Well, it's a fantastic occasion for me to be with you today. The speakers so far have been remarkable. I make no promises here. And the organizers have put together nothing short of a spectacular conference. And so if you can join me in giving them a round of applause to say thank you. So thank you to all of you. I often put myself and others in controlled environments of fear because I believe that there is no growth in the comfort zone and that there is no comfort in growth. And my experiences define my philosophy on fear. A philosophy that life is brighter as we embrace our fears, a philosophy that faith is not the absence of fear, no, but it is our fear that allows us to have faith. Well, in fact, the relationship is both positive in direction and proportional in magnitude. Well, I'm not saying that fear and faith can coexist, because they can't. But what I am saying is that if we want to have a greater faith, we must first be willing to welcome a greater fear. And in so doing, gain power both over fear and from our fears. Well, I am a political analyst. I study conflicts and populism. I am a lieutenant in a joint security task force. But I'm also a subject of racial abuse, misunderstanding, and ignorance. I am a Christian, a religion in which fear plays a particular role, some of which I agree with and will talk about today, but others I don't. I am a chef who got a chance to cook in a Michelin 2-star restaurant. But I am also a recovering suicide survivor. Now, these experiences combine to shape my relationship with fear. In fact, I still feel fear every time I hold a plastic bag. I fear because it reminds me of the night I tried and almost succeeded in killing myself. I fear because a part of me still wants to. In society in general, we avoid talking about suicide, but especially among men, which is why today, despite it being painful and terrifying, I hope to share my experience with you. In doing so, I need to make a clarification. In my bio, it mentioned that I was hospitalized after my attempt. Well, last week, someone said that I couldn't have been hospitalized because to be hospitalized, you need to be in the hospital for technically more than 24 hours, which I wasn't. And so, in essence, saying that my attempt was just not serious enough and that it would do me good if I recognized that it wasn't severe. Well, since then, I have, I think, changed my bio, and I'd like to apologize for the misrepresentation because I know that there are many whose lives are infinitely harder than anything I can ever imagine, and it is to you my heart goes out to, and for you that I'm dedicating the rest of my life to serving. Well, this comment, which I believe was made in kindness, was said behind my back. But if it was said to me or to any suicide survivor, I would express my gratitude for an important piece of medical information that I should know. But as well, I would say that, kind or not, such a comment is deeply insensitive. Because as if any suicide survivor ever needs reminding that their attempt somehow wasn't severe enough. Our every and often painful breath is a reminder that our attempt was not severe enough. Well, I remember as if it were yesterday, sitting in a particularly brutal undergraduate political economy class. And the professor made us look around and said 1 in 5 college students experiences suicidal tendencies, depression, or the like. Back then, it would never have crossed my mind that I would soon experience fear to an extent that I have. But what Professor Cooper and many others dearest to my heart have done for me in the time since, I wish to offer to you. We might know each other well, or we might not know each other at all. But if you need someone to talk to, I will be there. If you need someone to speak to, I will be there. If you just need someone, I will be there. Because you are not alone in your fears. And I'm willing to guarantee that there are many in the audience today who would be willing to stand with you both in your joys and in your fears. And if you in the audience today would be willing to do that, would you please signify by way of applause that you would do that? As a survivor, I thank you. My point is that we all face fear at different times, at different ways, and it's okay. And today I want to talk with you about you. Your fears, your worries, your insecurities. I want to take you on a journey with me through my fears and what I am doing to welcome them. And I hope that as I do so, that you will not only walk with me, but that you will take your fears with you. Well, I don't know about you, but it takes me 20 minutes to cook a half-decent pot of rice. And not only am I a chef, but I'm also Asian, and so I know a thing or two about cooking rice. So the idea of talking about transforming fear in 20 minutes is in itself terrifying, but we will do our best. 3 steps. First, acknowledge the duality of fear. Second, transform fear. And third, empathize with others. Now, fear can be devastating. Fear can be devastating. Randomized experiments show that fear, more so than anger, is the primary emotion activated by political rhetoric of today. It is fear that motivates an individual to vote Trump, Brexit, what have you. But let's be clear about 2 things. First, fear in political rhetoric is not exclusive to the right. No, it is found on all ends of the political spectrum. In fact, game theory would explain why a fear-based political rhetoric and dirty ads will forever be a part of the political system. The second, I think, is more important, especially for those in attendance today. These same randomized experiments show that the more educated you are, the more emotionally pliable you are. In essence, saying that a fear-based political rhetoric has a more marked effect on making you feel fear if you are more educated. Perhaps unexpected, but I think important to realize that no one is immune. But beyond politics, violent extremists rely on fear, and many use fear as a tool to force compliance on an individual, intimate level of personal relationships, and that is unacceptable. Well, on the other hand, as a police officer, fear allowed me to move quicker, think faster. Fear gave me the power to do more than I otherwise would have been able to do. If you're trying to find me in the pictures above, I am the Asian with the small, squinty eyes. I know it's hard to pick us out because we all look the same. No, because of our uniform. That there is a positive form of fear can itself be liberating, right? Because we can now understand the nature of our fear and in so doing begin to control it. I would say that 99% of the time, positive fears take the form of a fear for. For example, if you are staring down the face of a lion and you fear for your life, rightly so. On the other hand, negative fears take the form of a fear of. And here, a social media perpetuated fear of missing out is a classic example of this unhealthy fear. Well, transforming a negative fear of to a positive fear for requires a degree of mental gymnastics and practice. The author, Marianne Williamson, who was quoted by Rocky Balboa, said, "Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." Well, I believe that our greatest fears are in reality our greatest strengths. Think about it with me. Many of us have a fear of being inadequate. I would say that for the religious, this is less a fear of being nothing, but rather it is a fear of being everything, even a divine creation of infinite worth. But for the secular, the exact same applies. A fear of being inadequate is not a fear of our weakness, it is a fear of our strengths, because the reality is we can only truly be afraid of the things which we are most proud of. Because it is with the things that we are most proud of that truly hurts when attacked. For me, I've long had a fear of being Asian or Chinese on a superficial level. I don't play basketball, and that was occasionally an awkward situation to be in. I prefer potatoes to rice, and that was always sacrilegious. And I just did not fit into the mold of what you would expect from a traditional Chinese. Well, on a deeper level, me being Asian raises the question of where will I live? What will I do for work? What will my life be like? Perhaps you have had similar questions even if you are not Asian. The Harvard Business Review reports that when qualifications and resumes are exactly identical, the callback ratio from employers to white candidates compared to minority candidates is a staggering 2-to-1. This same gulf exists when minorities try to contact their political representatives. They are less heard and less seen. And so I fear. But we can transform our fears. My fear of being Asian can be transformed into a fear for the future or fear for acceptance. And with this, something happens. Fear ceases to be about my being, but is now redefined to a set of actions or events. In other words, instead of being something outside of my control, having black hair and brown eyes, I have now redefined fear, transformed it into something within my control, or something that I can reject. It is this transformation and the power to now control fear that gives me power from fear and over fear. Well, unfortunately, there will always be times that are outside of our control, sometimes because of others around us. For me, what drove me to suicide were the fears, racial and others, of those closest to me, but fears that I must say I was unable to manage. Well, beyond me, Border Patrol officers might fear when they receive unreasonable orders from their superiors. Migrant families fear when they see Border Patrol officers walking towards them armed to the teeth. Ordinary individuals in the community might fear when they see immigrant families moving into their neighborhood. My grandfather, growing up during World War II in Japanese-occupied Singapore, had every reason to fear, especially when he was working in the military base of his foreign invaders. And he would have let fear consume him, if not for the actions of several Japanese officers who would intentionally leave part of their lunch uneaten, so that the young 7 boy cleaning up after them could have something to eat. Justified or not, those around us often have fears, and these fears might impact us. Well, I'm not perfect at this whole transforming fear thing, and definitely not perfect at developing empathy. I'm working through it every single day. But I draw inspiration from stories like my grandfather, and particularly at this time, in this Easter time of the year. And as a Christian, I draw inspiration from a man who lived and died almost 2,000 years ago on the Mount of Olives, in the Garden of Gethsemane. He knew he was about to be betrayed by a man he counted among his best friends. He knew he was about to die and was about to suffer before he died, but perhaps did not understand the magnitude of that suffering. He would, and I quote, suffer pains, temptations, and afflictions of every kind, and this that the word might be fulfilled, which saith he would take upon him the pains and sufferings of his people, and he would take upon him death, that he may lose the bands of death which doth bind his people. And he would take upon him their infirmities, that he may know according to the flesh how to succor his people according to their infirmities. Well, I hope it's not sacrilegious to say that Jesus experienced fear. But not once, not twice, but 3 times in recorded word, we read him cry out, "Father, if it be possible, take this cup from me." I know I have made similar cries, and perhaps you have, if not to deity, then just out in pure desperation for some relief. What impresses me, however, is the ability to have empathy in spite of our fears. Quickly surrounded by soldiers, Peter, forever by his side, drew his sword and cut off the ear of an approaching armed guard. And Jesus, in an act that confuses me, reached out and healed this guard, the very man who would minutes later lead him as a lamb to the slaughter. Now, whether or not you believe in Jesus as I know him to be, or whether you question the veracity of the man, it really doesn't matter, because is this story, even if it is only a story, an ideal to which we should be working towards, especially in the political climate that we live in today. The empathy to be able to reach out to those different from you, to reach out to those who have hurt you, to reach out to those who pain you, whose fears inflict you, and then to heal them. I don't claim by any stretch that empathy will solve everything. It will not. But it will do a few things for us. It will allow us to speak up without speaking down to those who are different from us, those we might fear. It will allow us to hurt, but not hate, when those who fear us try to pull us down. But perhaps most importantly, it will allow us empathy to act and not be acted on. It is empathy that brings true power both from fear and over fear, because now not only are we free from the negative shackles of our own fears, but we are now liberated from the fears of others, the fears that used to pull us down. Because we have begun on this process to acknowledge and understand our fears and to transform our fears, we now have the responsibility, even the duty, to protect the fears and vulnerabilities of those around us, even those we disagree with, and especially those who disagree with us. I promise you that this is not easy by any stretch. But it is especially needed in the environment that we live in today, where conflicts happen on a daily basis, where distrust seems to be the norm, where the political other is marginalized, and where tensions run high. But I promise you that empathy will bring a brighter light and a greater faith to our life and to the world. And so I plead with you to acknowledge the duality of fear, to transform your fear, but then most importantly, to empathize with others. Thank you.